Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining. Just to quickly introduce myself, welcome to the International Women's Day at Two Work event. I'm Gal Leslie. I'm the co-founding director of Two Work, who are a flex space operator in Central and Outer Leeds and Wakefield, soon to be in the northwest of England as well. So keep your eyes posted on that. Wanted to thank you everyone for joining us virtually and to explain that the purpose of the event really is to celebrate women in the workplace and to share our stories and inspire change. We are very, very delighted to be welcome, shall I say, our panel, who've very kindly given up their time to join us. I'll give a very brief introduction of everybody here, and then we'll throw some questions out to them. So, in no particular order, we'll start with Colette Evans. Colette is founder and owner of Picture Perfect. They provide content creation and strategy for fitness and wellness, helping coaches and brands show up online in a way that matches their expertise. More importantly, Colette is also a member of our Wakefield workspace in Tileyard North. So thank you, Colette. And next we have Claire Sutherley. Claire is the managing director of We Are Wakefield, where she leads a growing business community committed to driving economic prosperity across the district. She also serves as a deputy lieutenant of the West Yorkshire on behalf of His Majesty the King, and has recently taken on the role of president of the Royal British Legion South and West Yorkshire. So thank you, Claire, keeping you out of mischief by the sounds of that.
Absolutely.
We have Adam Rawlings. Adam is a male advocate of the women's game, and his experience as head of football at Rotherham United Women FC and first team manager in the women's game with over 9 years experience in the women's side of sport. He's seen and driven the expansion of women's participation at all levels. So welcome, Adam. And last but not least is Alyssa Thursfield. Alyssa is the founder and managing director of, is it pronounced Heroes, Alyssa?
Heroes. Yeah,
Heroes,
right.
yeah. Which is a HR consultancy and an e-learning business providing SMEs with guidance and protection for their workforce. A specialist employment law solicitor, she previously served as head of department and director at a regional law firm before moving into the tech sector. Outside of work, and I think more importantly, because you're actually volunteering today, aren't you, Alyssa? Alyssa is a long-serving, you're taking some time out for us, and we appreciate that. So Alyssa is actually a long-serving RNLI helm and commander, responsible for mission planning, crew welfare, and the safety of those in her care. She combines her RNLI and corporate experience to deliver coaching and training to managers and business leaders. So welcome, Alyssa. So let's get started. We are going to start with talking about personal journeys and inspiration. So I've got a couple of individual questions for our panel. And Alyssa, we'll start with you, since we left you till last at the end. If you could tell us how your career path led you to creating a business that supports SMEs.
Sure. So I spent most of my career doing quite a traditional legal path. So university, trained to be a solicitor, and then joined a big firm, and that's supposed to be it for the rest of your career. I found within a specialty of employment, I spent a lot of time supporting small businesses, but also seeing the disadvantages they faced compared to the much larger corporates that have in-house legal teams, have access to some of the biggest law firms in the world. And that there really is this sort of resources gap for smaller businesses when it comes to compliance, managing staff, skill issues with managers. So it was an area I became really, really passionate about. And when I left private practice and set up my own business, it was very much around supporting that SME sector.
Okay. Oh, okay, wonderful. Colette, what inspired you to take on your current role and start your own business?
Well, I thought I fell into my own business. So from being the age 12, I actually wanted to be a photographer and a videographer from age 10, I think. So I got work experience when I left school at 15 in a photography studio, and then obviously just worked in a studio from, well, not obviously, but worked in a studio from there on in. And then in terms of my own business, I actually got asked to do a family friend's wedding. And then I thought, you know what, this is all right, and a bit extra money on the side. While I was working in a photography studio in Sheffield at the time, and then I just thought, right, let's just go for it. I didn't even think about it. I just went for it. Thought, right, extra cash, extra holidays. That was 2012, and yeah, never looked back basically. So I've always followed photography. and content creation, and just went for it. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Adam, why did you get involved in the women's game, and what's kept you passionate about it over the years?
Yeah, it's definitely something that has boomed in the last few years, hasn't it? So I got into it back in, it would have been 2017. Whilst I was at uni, I just was exposed to a really good experience that I had managing the university team in Sheffield. And from there, I'd never really left the game in terms of the women's side of the game. So I went from there to working at Sheffield FC, then through to Loughborough University, and then into other realms of from there I went to Doncaster Bells, and then I moved into first team management at Rossington Ladies in Doncaster, and then into my role at Rotherham. So yeah, it's just been a pretty positive experience throughout it all. And I guess what's driven me and kept the passion in the game is to see the growth and the impact that we've had. And so many more people are interested now. So last year we had like our highest crowd of 410 people at a game, which in the relative sphere of the women's game, that's a pretty big crowd. The year before that, we had 1,500 people at New York Stadium. So, you know, big corporations and big clubs now are starting to make that change, and the impact is definitely growing. So that sort of gives you the drive in itself.
Okay, fantastic. And Claire, what responsibility do you feel comes with leading a business community like We Are Wakefield?
Huge responsibility. I really do feel honoured to carry that responsibility. I feel really privileged to do the job that I do, but on quite a few levels, really. So We Are Wakefield has become, it's much more than a networking organisation. It's a community, and well, we have over 200 members now. This event behind me was our first Friday event last month, so you can see how big they are. I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to make sure that our community is warm, welcoming, that people feel supported, that it's become a family. We call it the We Are Wakefield family, and it's a massive family that actually gets on, so it's quite unusual. But the responsibility of making sure that that's always the case, so no one becomes a member without going through me first. I make it very clear that you know, by becoming part of the We Are Wakefield family, you have to give opportunities as much as you want to take them, that it's a two-way street. I work really closely with all our businesses and charities, education providers, cultural organisations. I feel responsible that they get what they need from being part of this group. It's really challenging times at the moment for everyone. I've walked down that path of a failing business. I feel really privileged to be on these journeys with the people that come to We Are Wakefield, and a lot of them confide in me when they're having tough times. So my responsibility really is to make sure that I support them in every way that I can, make the connections that they need, and just, yeah, I feel it's a huge responsibility to continue the work that we've been doing over the last 4 years, and supporting everyone within the organisation, the community.
Okay. Well, we asked for our members, we went out on our socials and asked for people to submit questions for the panel. So these questions that I'm going to ask now are for all of you to answer in any order. They're not aimed at anyone in particular. So you can fight over it as to who's going to answer what. But I think one of the important sections here is about challenges and leadership. And I think, you know, we're a women-led business. We are a female-led business. So we have plenty of challenges in our industry. So talking from your own experiences, what do you think what challenges do women face in the workplace, and how have you navigated them?
Who wants to go first?
Colette, let's go with you.
I'll go first. So I think in the creative industry, particularly when I started out, you know, I was only 15. It was a very male-dominated industry. and it could be, obviously I was young as well, but I, by the time I was 20, I'd had 5 years professional experience in the industry, and even up until, I mean, I'm 38 now, but up until like 30, I'm going for tenders in corporate. I didn't specialize in fitness back then, but like in corporate and, big jobs. And they're looking at me like, well, how can you do this? And I could tell what they were thinking. And it's like, well, actually, I've got decades of experience professionally, and I know what I'm doing. I've been running my own business now for like 10, 15 years. I do know what I'm doing. I think it's just that, I suppose, people just assuming that you can't do it. And I don't think that's whether you're male or female. I think that's just an age thing and an assumption that you've not been doing it long. You've only just left uni or whatever, but that weren't the case for me. But in terms of like being a female in the creative industry, I just think it's, I don't know, maybe not being visible or something like that, like not having the confidence to show up and go, no, actually I can do this and I'm going to lead a team, and I am as good as men. That's just my perspective. Yeah.
I think switching that slightly, we can twist that question to Adam, because you would expect to a degree, and I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but you would expect a manager of a football team to be male, because men like football and women don't like football, apparently. What challenges have you faced being in the women's game specifically?
Yeah, it's something that's definitely prevalent now. It becomes sort of like not an imposter in the game, but certainly we want to advocate for more women in the women's game. Like that's how it is. And I've come across some great coaches. So I think I wouldn't say challenges per se, because I was in the role. I just had to justify why I was good for the job. Like that's ultimately what I was there to do. And I just essentially embraced it. So I had female coaches come and work with me. I helped female coaches along the way. I connected with other managers, whether they're female or male. So I guess I just kind of rode the journey, because I was put in a role that was probably more welcomed in by a woman, which would be absolutely right because it's the female side of the game. But I just essentially had to justify my job in terms of results and performances and that sort of stuff. And I think as long as you do that, then you're probably safe in your job for a while. But yeah, I think part of it is just about embracing it and accepting that there should be a female presence in a female dressing room. Like I cannot relate to at least 50% of the things as opposed to like my female colleagues would be able to. So they're really useful relationships to have. And I think, yeah, embracing it has been really important for me as a male in a female space.
Okay. How do you think workplace cultures influence confidence and progression, Claire? What do you think there?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky one, isn't it? How do workplace cultures influence confidence and progression? I think massively. I mean, if working with a lot of different sectors as well, you see this where that there are some businesses now that work really hard on the culture within the team, and Alyssa will probably be good to answer this from a HR perspective, but it's become more important now that your culture's right within your business. Tables have turned where now candidates are interviewing the employers rather than the other way around, and you've got to really show that you've got a good culture in your workplace, or people will not come and work for you, or they won't last, that's for sure. I think it was interesting what Colette said there about age being a factor as well. In different industries you see not just challenges in the workplace for depending on what your gender is, but your age as well, and whether and how seriously you take. And I've definitely felt that as I've got older, I probably feel like I'm taken a little bit more seriously, and that shouldn't be the case. I've always been a competent person in whatever role I've been in, but I do feel that I probably get taken a little bit more seriously now I'm older. But you can kind of sense a culture in a business, and I think if the culture's right and people advocate for each other within a team, confidence grows and progression comes from that. Progression comes for the individuals and it comes for the organisation itself. So getting that culture right can be really difficult, more so in some industries than others, when you've got a mixture of personalities, a mixture of age groups, a mixture of gender and abilities. And yeah, I think if you can get that right, that magical formula within your business, then confidence and progression will happen on so many different levels.
I purposely left Alyssa till last on this particular question because I thought Alyssa would have the ultimate answer for it. So what's your take on that, Alyssa, about workplace culture and how it influences confidence and progression?
Pressure with the ultimate answer. So I would say having the right culture has gone from a nice to have, which can help with attracting talent, retaining talent, to actually now being a must have. So if you have a positive and supportive culture where we are set up for people from different backgrounds, different life challenges, where we're not losing women because they've had children, because we're not accommodating them, because we're not positive around supporting performance for people who've had challenges, that skill drop off, one, it affects a company's ability to grow and retain. And we know that it's more expensive to recruit than it is to retain. But also now from a legal perspective, companies are seeing themselves get into legal hot water more and more. Litigation is expensive. Getting your costs back if you win is basically unheard of if you're an employer. So the fundamental reality is, if you get your culture wrong, if you don't invest in positive improvement in this space, it's going to hit your bottom line. And unfortunately, with some of my clients and other businesses out there, that's the only way you can get this message to land. It would be lovely if people saw the benefits of a positive culture from an employee experience perspective, but unfortunately it's still not the case. And unless we're talking in financial terms, some businesses still don't get it. But those that do, where they are training people around things like menopause awareness, understanding what women go through, that they recognize the skill drop when they've got people who go and they have children and they're not returning after they've had their families because it's too hard. The businesses that recognize those challenges and address them and make it a positive workplace, they're the ones that are going to fly over the coming years, because there's lots of challenges out there, particularly in the economy. And it's those businesses that are going to do better than the ones that are stuck in the time that was 15, 20 years ago.
How do you think then they can better support women at all levels? Alyssa, what would be your sort of key advice for those organisations?
It's really simple. They've got to listen. I think there's lots of assumptions that people will make about challenges that women face, but we're all individuals. We've all had different life experiences. Unless you're speaking to your staff, unless you're understanding what's important to them and what's important to the people coming through the door, so unless you're educating yourself, listening to what's going on and thinking, right, what can we do within our business that's going to address these challenges, and having those people at the table. Nothing frustrates me more than people saying that they listen to their staff and then a group of 10 men going into a room with a closed door and making those decisions. You've got to have these voices at the table as well, and be prepared to try and fail. So we try something, it doesn't work, we try something else. We don't then rule it out and go, well, that didn't work, we'll just go back to the way that we were doing it before. So the key thing is to listen, but then also have those voices in the room as well.
Okay. And here's one for all of you, actually. A good question to ask is, what advice you'd give women starting out in your industry today? And I think, Adam, if we start with you, women join. I mean, a lot of women, obviously the increase in popularity in women's football over the last couple of years, and thanks to the Lionesses. But if I were sat at home and I wanted to join your football club, what would be your advice for women that just want to get started?
I would definitely start with saying there's never been a better time. That's for sure. There are so many opportunities up and down every level of women's football now. The best thing that I could say to anyone is just connect with people. The amount of just conversations I have with different football clubs, different representatives of different departments in football clubs, you don't understand until you're in the world how many opportunities there are in loads of different fields. So if you didn't want to become a coach, for example, you could become a psychologist in the club. You could be a welfare officer. You could pretty much be anything within a football club. It's like a little world in its own right. So I would definitely say branch out, think about the opportunities, but above everything else is just connect with as many people as you can in that space, and I guess that goes across a lot of different things, but right now there are so many things going on in women's football that there's never been a better time. So just take it with both hands and run with it.
Okay. And Colette, I suppose from you who started so young,
Yeah.
what would be your advice there for somebody wanting to get started in their own business? I dare say there aren't many women that would have started at 15, by the way.
I know. So I think in the creative industry, just get the experience. So I've got formal qualifications in photography, yet the experience really did count for me. So I worked for free for one photographer for 18 months while I were at uni. And the first photographer I worked for were a couple of weeks, but then it went on to like part-time work. So if you can just be humble and show that you actually are willing to learn, that is the main thing. I've had lots of apprentices, assistants, interns myself in my own team. And the one thing I'm seeing now a lot is that a lot of young people come in and they just think they know it all. And I don't mean to sound brash about that, but honestly, you've just got to be humble and go, this person's got 20, 30 years more experience than me. I'm going to listen to them. And don't think you know it all because your tutor told you. Because end of the day, that tutor's probably not been in the role that the mentor you've got on the work experience has got. They're not in the industry. So just be willing to learn, basically. Work for free. I tell everyone, go and get work experience for a year for free, and they look at me, got out. And the other thing is just also educate yourself as much as possible. It's easy now online, marketing, customer service. Like, what does good customer service look like? About business and operations. I know a lot of this comes with experience, but teach yourself about finance. If you're going to set up your own business, you need to know what you can claim back, what you can't claim back. Don't get yourself into hot water like I did. No one tells you when you go VAT registered what to do. And you make the mistake. So really, hire a coach. If you can afford it, hire a coach or a mentor that can fast track you. And that's going to be one of the best ways you can actually learn in business and learn how to conduct yourself and get ahead. And that's what I've always done in my industry. And lastly, just believe in yourself. And back yourself, even if your family and friends don't, because I've been there too on that. So, vision where you want to be and just have that belief. And that comes with surrounding yourself with the right people, whether it's just listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, getting in networking groups, getting around people who are where you want to be. Just learn from others.
Yeah, it's a great response, Colette. If I'm honest, I think one of the biggest learns I had when I started out in this industry was be curious, always ask questions, and be prepared to be underestimated. And nothing drives you more than being underestimated because you want to go out and prove them. I think, Claire, it's a good question for you from a networking perspective, women specifically. And I'm not being ageist, but we've had this conversation about age. Younger women can feel quite intimidated walking into a room full of professionals, corporates. It's quite, it's quite a lot to do. What would your advice be there to women wanting to get out and network?
I have these conversations all the time. I think finding the right group, so shop around, get recommendations, attend lots of different ones. I mean, We Are Wakefield's massive. It's not, not for everyone. Some people prefer a more smaller, intimate group. So you've got to find what suits you, what suits your personality. But also it's important to find the one where the right people are there for you. So like Adam said about, asking the right questions, speaking to people who are already in that industry. Colette said about, surrounding yourself with the right people who know more than you. That's the key. But from a networking perspective, it's shopping around, it's speaking to your host. So don't be afraid to speak to the host of a networking organisation. They should be really happy to help, really supportive. They should offer to buddy you up. So if I've got someone coming to my events and they're a little bit shy or they're nervous, because it can be really overwhelming for anyone, I always say, right, well, come and find me. I've got someone in mind for you. I'll put you with so and so, and they'll take you under their wing and they'll look after you. Might do an email introduction to them first, because I know people who will do that, who will, you know, look after someone, take them under the wing at the event, make introductions for them, and learn from others. If networking's not something you've done a lot of, go follow someone around, shadow someone, see how they do it. But it's all about, I think, is being really open and transparent, sharing your worries and your challenges when you're there. I learned from my mistakes over the years. We had a family business for 27 years, and we went into liquidation in 2019. It was horrific. My one regret with everything is that I didn't tell people what was going on, because I was scared. I was scared that people would think it was my fault. I was scared that people would think I was stupid. I was scared that people would laugh at us, or, you know, or it'd have a negative impact on us even further. But actually, no, people are really open to supporting you. Like Colette said about mentors, about coaches. It doesn't have to be in a professional capacity, but using networking to have open conversations and share your worries, your fears, your challenges, your failures. You learn so much from that, and people are so willing to support you. So it's about finding the right groups where you feel comfortable and where you're going to be supported. But any good networking host should be able to support you and sort of get you into it, so you feel really comfortable then to come again. You will make good connections, and you'll follow up on those connections, and then you kind of find your people. I do make a point of not letting people get too comfortable, because we don't want it to be a pointless coffee morning with your friends. It's about then using those skills you've learned in those early days to go and have more conversations with people you don't know, because that's where we learn. So it's having those really open conversations, but in a supported environment.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Claire. And I think, coming from somebody that's done a lot of networking in my time, I have been that person that's walked into a room and thought, wow, where do I even begin?
Overwhelmed. Yeah.
It can be quite terrifying. Alyssa, how do you think your experience has shaped your leadership style or your approach to work? And has that changed since you've been volunteering at the RNLI, or do you apply the same rules to both your volunteering and your work?
I think they complement each other. But I mean, in terms of what I've learned and what I apply in a work capacity, it's about giving people a go. I had to fight for opportunities, fight for chances, fight for my seat at the table. Often kept out of the room purely because of gender. I've worked in some quite old-fashioned businesses, and I'm very much want to be someone who can make that difference for someone. So if someone is prepared to work, someone's prepared to, put the time in and the effort, that it's never anything arbitrary that keeps somebody out of a room or away from a table. But in terms of the RNLI, I had a really, really positive experience when I joined my crew. So I've been a volunteer for 20 years. And I've been through a full leadership program with the RNLI. So the training that I've had to become a commander very, very much translates into the corporate world. So things around, particularly things like psychological safety, understanding human factors in risk and high pressure situations, and learning from accident investigation processes within the RNLI is something that is so relatable within the corporate world. So having a blame culture never gets anybody anywhere, and it often doesn't actually bring on improvement. But understanding why people make the decisions that they make under pressure, or perhaps in those, highly stressful situations, and how we then apply those learnings so that we're constantly evolving. And I'd say the real things that translate for me is brief and debrief. So before we ever do anything new, before we do anything where there's any pressure, is making sure that we're briefing everybody involved. Does the whole team know what they're doing, what their role is, how their role fits into the wider picture, what the potential risks are, and how we're going to mitigate it? And then afterwards, in a debrief should never just be a pat on the back, this has gone well. And equally, it shouldn't just be a blame game. It's, what have we learned? What are the actions that we take from this? What is it that we'll do better next time, or what will we do differently next time? It doesn't even need to be better, but there could be a different way that we could have done something, and making sure that everybody has learned something from that situation. So that's so ingrained in the emergency services, it very much becomes second nature. And I think taking that into the corporate world has helped enormously in my own business. The startup world is brutal. Things go wrong all the time. It can be a really, really horrible environment. It can be very lonely as well when you're doing it as a sole founder. But actually taking those skills that I've learned from the RNLI in terms of how we deal with high pressure situations, how we deal with stress, how we deal with utter failure when things go totally wrong. I think it's meant that I've got a much more structured approach to management, and I'm not scared to fail. Failing is part of life, and often it's the first attempt when we do something we're going to fail, and we've got to stop seeing it in a positive, in a negative way. Failing is where we learn. If we get everything right the first time, we're never going to learn, we're never going to develop. So it's trying to remove that fear from those situations so that people see them as development opportunities. And I'd say that's what's really come across from the RNLI for me.
Okay. And I'll point that one to you as well, Adam, because I think the difficulty for you is, and I think you touched on it before, you know, you're not going to understand everything from a women's perspective, but your experience, how's that shaped your leadership style and your approach to your role?
Yeah, I think it's something I read very recently. Actually, there's a post that said when I was younger, I thought being a leader was having all the answers, but then as you progress in your career or you become a little bit more experienced, you become accustomed to actually elevating everybody else around you and being open to guide them and understand that their experiences might give you the answers that you don't have. And it's a sense of, I would say for me individually, it's just a humbling effect. Like you become a leader, you become a manager. Okay, these are my ideas, and this is how we do it. That works to some degree, but then to some degree it then isolates you, so that's no fun either. So yeah, I think it's just a case of being aware that other people have an input, and that elevates you, it elevates them, and everybody has a part to play in it. And I think welcoming people into those sort of spaces and conversations and giving them space to contribute is probably the most powerful thing that I've learned as a leader, and certainly in women's football, because I needed that. Like I couldn't navigate it on my own being a male in the sport. So yeah, you just have to be really genuine about the way that you go about it, and yeah, offer up people a bit more space.
Okay. I think looking at the future and looking at reflecting, has anyone here taken a career risk that scared the hell out of them, and has it actually worked? I can see Claire nodding, so let's start with you, Claire.
Yeah, this job. So I mentioned that we had a business that failed after 26 years. I then I went and worked for a training provider in Leeds very briefly that took me into the pandemic, and then took a job at Wakefield Council, which was very secure, nice pension, public sector. I think it was the most secure job I've ever had, really. And in 16 months, I've been offered to take on a failing organisation with 8 members that couldn't really pay me salary for very long. So it was make a decision: do I stay at the council and have that job security that I'd not really had before, always been within the family business before, and kind of being my own boss, or do I jump ship and take over this not-for-profit organisation with 8 members who were either hoping for something, a miracle to happen, or had forgotten they were members in the first place. So the temptation, you know, what do you do at that point? So it was a massive risk for me that I could have, you know, jumped out of some security there into something that I'd just be back to square one, where I was looking for something else, and my confidence would have been at rock bottom like it was when the family business failed. But I believed in We Are Wakefield. I believed that the district needed something. I believed that businesses needed something. We were just coming out of the pandemic, restrictions were just being lifted. And I'd been kind of connecting businesses while I was in my role at the council in business support, and felt that there was a real need for something that connected organisations, businesses, education, culture, local authority, charity, and that would join the dots and get everybody collectively supporting each other. The risk was that it was failing. Would people on board with it? Would people get involved? And everything was in the balance really on that first event that we set up in February 2022, when they've been getting about 20 people to We Are Wakefield events throughout the pandemic, and before that really it was failing. So I took my belief and jumped ship and took on the risk, set up the first event, and 98 people turned up. And everything was answered, yeah, this is needed, yes, there's a demand for it. And put it into their hands on that day and said, look, you know, as a community, we need to support each other now. We've been through a terrible 2 years. Let's get together, let's get, you know, join forces and see what we can do. And it's progressed from there. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of, you know, did I do the right thing? But every day now, I never question it. It was the best thing I ever did. I'd say it's the best job in the world. And to see the amazing things that are happening within our community is just off the scale. So it's job satisfaction off the scale. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Colette, what habit has had the biggest impact on your career?
I would say setting up my week ahead of time, just basics. So knowing what my objections and intentions are for the week, but like overall looking at a plan for the year, having a fire for that. So I actually lost that after the pandemic, and only got that back recently when I employed a business coach 5 months ago, and he made us set goals for 2026, and it took me a month to actually come up with one goal. And then once I were, you know, it were unlocked, I couldn't stop. And I had a full year of goals. So I think having that vision for where you're actually going really, really helps, because without that, you just day to day and you don't really know what your objections are, or yeah, there's no fire, is there? So I think that's one of the things that really, really helps me, is just having that goal, having a clear direction. And also it's not enough to have a goal, is it? You've got to know what tasks you need to do to get to that goal. So having quarterly broken down into monthly, broken down into weekly goals and daily tasks, you'll get there in the end. So far it's going good. And yeah, that's what I would say is the biggest thing really. And that, and hiring, like I said before, hiring mentors and coaches has been a really big impact for me as well. There's so many, but yeah, that's the things that stand out.
I think that's quite an interesting point, and you've made it a couple of times about the hiring mentors and coaches, because I think as business leaders, the fear is that it's seen as a weakness if you need somebody to help you with your business. I mean, Janthia, my co-director, and I, when we started out, fortunately with Two Work, we have an incredible mentor in our business already who's helped us, but it is almost seen as a negative, as a weakness. So it's interesting to hear the positive sides of it, because that needs to be shared more. Alyssa, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self as a woman starting out? And I'm giving that twofold, not just in your career, but in your volunteering side as well. What would you say to your younger self, advice-wise? And would you change anything?
I don't think I would change anything. I mean, it's not necessarily been the easiest journey to get where I am, and it's by no means finished. You know, I'm still in a startup phase with the business. But I'd say the biggest piece of advice is say yes. You know, if someone offers you an opportunity, because they don't come around offered very often, you know, more often than not, you're going out fighting for things. If someone asks, do you think you can do this, or is this within your capability? Say yes and work it out afterwards. We always find a way to get things done. And you know, there's no problem in your life up until this point that you haven't solved yet. Everything has a solution, everything has a way through it. And I think I do see this, unfortunately, with women more than I do with men, is that men will say yes more often than we do when it comes to opportunities or things that we think are a challenge or are going to be difficult. Say yes and work out how to do it afterwards. Because often you're not going to get asked a second time. And if an opportunity is going to come back on repeat, it will be to the person who's agreed to do it.
Okay, it's a great piece of advice. Adam, one for you. What's the one change you'd like to see for women in your field? So specifically management as opposed to playing, but what's the one change you'd like to see in the next, say, 5 years?
I guess it's the biggest thing is the community. So the biggest difference in the male and female game is the revenues that they're able to generate, and it's all because of the community and the fan bases and the exposure that the game gets. So that's really the biggest thing. If we can increase crowds, if we can increase fan bases, that comes with expanding infrastructure and all those things. Then the game will grow and grow and grow, and then you will see more women managers, you'll see more successful teams, and you'll certainly see more scenes like we had with the Lionesses at the Euros. So I think we're ahead of the curve in terms of world women's football, but we need to stay that way, and certainly expanding the fan base and the exposure of the women's game is the biggest step forward, because that is what underpins the revenues to then drive in progression in the other areas. So yeah, that's the biggest thing, I think.
Do you think, I'm coming back to you on that, do you think women are opposed to wanting to step into management because they see that as a male orientated role?
I think so. I think so. But I can only speak from my side, because I feel like the women's game is slowly changing, because it does almost, it's an exaggeration to say I feel like an imposter in the women's game, but I feel like that role subconsciously, and maybe it's me as an individual, that role should be a women's role, because like it's their game. Which is why I just, like I said before, I go into a role and you have to justify your placement. So I think the women's game is changing. I think, yes, they'll be a little bit more intimidated about a male in that role because of the stigma around that. I can't imagine, for example, Emma Hayes taking over a men's team. I don't think that stigma's yet fixed, but we'll certainly be closer to that sort of scenario. So I guess it's roles reversed, isn't it, in the women's game? But it's growing for sure, and the number of women that are taking management roles now is a lot higher. And the more women, not only just in management roles, but like I said before, there's women in my coaching staff and all those places that are really, really important, and that's how they gain experiences as well. So yeah, I think it's more than just the management roles, but there's certainly a change that's happening.
I mean, we've seen female referees. You never know, there might be a female Premier League manager at some point. Who knows?
Exactly.
Okay, so last and final question for all of you, because you've been really generous with your time. I really appreciate it today. So why is International Women's Day important to you personally or professionally? Let's start with Claire.
I think it's because it opens up conversations like these. I'm attending 4 International Women's Days events this week, including this one. I'm hosting 2 of them. And if you can inspire and encourage women to do what they're capable of, and help them with that self-belief, and celebrate our male allies as well. Let's not forget that. I mean, we get great support from our male allies. It's not just about women supporting women, it's about men supporting us as well, and they do. I think that's a really important thing to say. But I think the great thing about International Women's Day is opening up those conversations with a view to just advocating and inspiring.
Okay, super. Alyssa?
Sorry, I'm muted. Kind of echoing what Claire said, really, in that it's the opportunity for these sorts of events. So this week I'm at a women's only event in Poole with the RNLI. So everyone on the training that I'm doing is female, and they've been running these events all week. There's conferences and speakers in the evening, and I just think whilst we should be doing this sort of thing all the time, these opportunities should always be here. It's a nice marker in the year to actually make sure that we do something, that we think about what progress have we made over the last year, what have we got left that needs to be done. And I attended a female entrepreneurs event at the House of Lords earlier this year, and there was a report that was done by, I think it was the Entrepreneur Network, who said at the current trajectory, we're only going to see equality between the genders when it comes to startups and entrepreneurs in 2060. It's too slow. And I think we need things on an annual basis to keep that momentum, because it's too easy for it to slip otherwise. And actually, if we get to, this time next year and we're not seeing progress in an area where we actually have some control and some influence, then we've got to work harder. So it's that nice annual reminder for me, and it's why I'm so passionate about it.
Super, thank you. Adam.
Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of echo both Claire and Alyssa there. I think from my perspective, it's a case of being a face of a male that has a real strong influence in the women's game and showing the impact that men can have in our game, to make sure that it doesn't feel like an imposter situation where we're actually contributing to more young girls coming through a pathway. We've strengthened a pathway to make sure that the women's game especially is successful and sustainable. So acknowledging the part that we as males have to play, because a lot of, certainly in football, by and large, all of the male clubs are bigger than the women's clubs, so we need the males on side to be able to grow it and to support it. Which I think, like Claire said, like a lot of the male institutions are definitely moving in that direction. So I guess it's just showing a face really from a male side of, we have a part to play too, and the part to play, yes, maybe I'm a manager in a women's game, but actually the impact of my role goes way further than that in terms of getting the younger girls in the game and making sure that we increase the participation on so many levels. So yeah, it's just really about playing my part, I guess.
Super. No, I totally agree. And Colette, finally, how about you?
I'm going to throw you a curveball. So I actually compete in women's natural bodybuilding. I've currently got a world title. So I would say be visible. Whether that be, that comes from a place of, I hid myself for years in terms of who I was in the bodybuilding world to corporate clients. And I think, make sure you're visible. Make sure you build your personal brand. I think building your personal brand is the biggest asset you could do, and it's free. You can do it online. Start your own YouTube, start your own podcast, get yourself out there, and that's part of the networking, I suppose. But yeah, I just think that it's a good way. International Women's Day is a good way to celebrate who you are, be visible, and just remind yourself that you do need to be present, and you do deserve to have a voice as well. And it's not just like, you shouldn't just go, right, this is me in my job and that is my identity. The whole of you is your identity, and celebrate that.
No, that's absolutely right. I think until the top companies, I mean the top, I think a report I read, the top 50 global companies are still less than 50% female board members, which is, to me, is just bizarre. We're living in the 21st century. There's no reason for that. We can do anything. To your point, Colette, we can bodybuild. I do love that. That's another point of being underestimated, when it can be something as simple as a delivery to your door and the delivery guy says, would you like me to carry it in? You're like, I could deadlift you, mate. Don't worry about that. So that's all from me. Do any of you wish to add anything else before we close the call today?
I'll add something. So I can't remember which question it was, but just, I think giving myself a bit of advice is, don't be afraid to niche into a certain area. It took me years of dipping my toe in and out of being, at one point I were doing corporate photography, as well as doing weddings, as well as doing bodybuilding and fitness shoots, as well as doing anything that came my way. And I think the moment I decided to go, no, I'm only marketing myself within fitness and wellness, that changed everything for me. It made my life easier, the marketing a lot easier. I didn't have to have 2 websites, 2 Instagrams, just everything became a lot easier. So if you feel a passion for a certain area, go for it. But obviously you can accept work from other sectors, but make sure it's your mission to say, this is what I specialise in, and be confident about that. But I suppose that comes with time. So yeah.
Do you think there's an age element to that as well, Colette? Do you think it's as you get older you start to recognise that almost niche, that selflessness?
I think
or selfishness, shall I say?
I think it comes more with business experience of not working from a place of fear that no, you know, you're not going to get work or enough work, etc. And just learned experience, I suppose. But at some point, you've just got to do it, because I think, from my experience, just because otherwise you're just going to be running around like, do I attend corporate networking, or do I attend a bodybuilding show? Do I attend a fitness expo? Where am I going to meet my ideal client? And it becomes too exhausting. You're spreading yourself too thin. And also, like, now I use my personal brand because I specialize in fitness and wellness. I use my bodybuilding title to market myself. So it's like, what makes sense? You know, what ties in. So use your personal brand as well. But yeah, I think it does come down to more experience than age.
Okay. I said I had a last question, but this is the last question, I promise, for all of you. If you had a motto or a line or a strap line that you would say is your kind of go-to, what would it be? And to kick you off, mine would be, what's the worst that can happen? So Adam, do you have any that you would kind of live by or advise?
Yeah, I have very millennial of me, but I have a video that I swear by, and it's essentially the video of which wolf wins. So there are two wolves. One is darkness and despair. The other is light and hope. They fight. Who wins? And it's the one that you feed. So if you feed the negative energy that you have, then you'll probably fail, and you'll probably just give up or do whatever. But if you try and spin it and you try and find a motive and you try and find a solution to a problem, then you're probably going to win. So that's it, really. That just builds a little bit of resilience.
No, it's a good one. Alyssa, what about you? Oh, you're still on mute, Alyssa.
Sorry, it's because it's noisy in the pool.
Sorry.
I still the are analysed. So with courage, nothing's impossible.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Claire, what about you?
During lockdown, I started listening to a podcast called How to Own the Room by a woman called Viv Groskop, and she's an amazing author and a real women's advocate. And she's written How to Own the Room, a book, and Lift as You Climb. And it's all about taking people with you as you're on your way up, lift people with you. And it really falls in line with the Give to Gain theme for International Women's Day this year. And for me, it would be lift as you climb. So advocate for people, take them with you, give a little bit of yourself, and you'll be amazed at what comes back.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's a great one. Colette, what about you?
There's a guy called Eric Thomas on YouTube. Look him up. And he basically says, if you want it as bad as you want to breathe, then, basically it's worth it. So I suppose go all in and just go at it until you either fail or succeed.
Well, what's the worst that can happen? That's my take on it is, they can always say no, they can always say, you never know. You never know. Right. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Really appreciate you giving that time to us today. And Alyssa, thank you for taking time out of your volunteering today to spend it with us. And thank you for advocating for International Women's Day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.